You are listening to the Fly the W670 podcast. It is season 3, episode 95. What is going on with the Cubs organization? Don't forget to listen, download, review, most importantly, subscribe to this podcast. Follow on the socials, Fly the W670, Twitter, Instagram, Fly the W on Facebook. Email us, flythew670@gmail.com. All right, Crawly. So we're seeing other teams spend money. Specifically, when I woke up this morning, I saw that the Dodgers invested another 150 plus million in a excellent pitcher, but it's deferred, and I think we need to talk about that at some point today.
Yeah, some of it is deferred, and you know, Dustin. I mean, any team can do it. We have Bob Nightengale that's going to be on the show. He talks about how the Nationals did that a lot. They're still paying Steven Strasburg. The Cubs are still paying Jason Hayward this year. So, you know, it happens. Teams can do it. Anyone's able to do it. So whether there needs to be a rule or something, I'm not sure, but it's within the rules.
But it doesn't seem like many people are taking advantage of it. And I guess then the question is, why aren't the Cubs taking advantage of that? There's number 50 on your list of questions at CubsCon, Crawly. Tom, why are you not deferring money?
Well, I'll tell you, Tom has gotten smarter as he's owned the Cubs. He doesn't meet with the fans. They don't do that anymore.
Yeah, I know. I keep telling them that people like that.
Well, they know people like it. They also know that they're going to get very difficult questions, and you know, that's kind of, you know, a lot of what this episode is about. I mean, look, as fans, we're always going to grumble about ownership not spending or being cheap. Doesn't matter if it's the Bears or the Bulls or the Cubs or whoever. The Reinsdorfs will, you know, it always kind of is a good villain, right, in sports talk. But Dustin, right now for the Cubs, it's not just the fans, but you're starting to hear national beat writers and other people around baseball wondering, you know, what the Cubs are waiting for, why they seem to be unwilling to spend. You mentioned the Dodgers. You see the Angels going out and making moves. But this was a clip that we had from about a month ago with John Heyman talking to the Mully and Haw show in the morning. And you know, this is really, when I heard this, you know, I think a lot of Cub fans were shaking their heads in agreement.
I agree. We've been saying this on the show forever, right? I mean, the Cubs' revenues are high. They're not the Yankees or the Red Sox or the Dodgers, but certainly in the top 5 or 6 teams in terms of revenue. You know, I think it's time to spend. You know, it's enough of this mediocrity, and they've got to get going. And it's in a decent free agent crop, you know, whether it be Alonso and they move Bush to second and trade Hoerner, or whether they go for one of the top pitchers, Max Fried, Corbin Burns. There are a lot of good pitchers that are out there, and including those 2 number 1 type pitchers. So, you know, it's time for the Cubs to spend some of that profit. I would agree. I mean, he probably said it more subtly and nicer than me, but time to get going for the Cubs because they do not spend their profits.
I think maybe that should be the hashtag this year instead of Fly the W or whatever that you have to see it, whatever the little slogan, we can put that as the hashtag for the Cubs next year. They don't spend their profits.
They're still paying for all that concrete, Crawly. They're still paying for all that concrete. You don't understand.
Must be a hell of a lot of concrete.
You don't understand how expensive concrete is.
Well, you take a look here as far as revenue. This is 2023. Again, the Cubs are always in the top 5 or 6, okay? Whether you're talking about revenue, whether you're talking about the value of the team, they're roughly right there. It's usually Yankees, Dodgers, Cubs, Red Sox, some combination of those 4, right? As far as revenue. And so the question, you know, that you got to ask is what's going on? Now, this is recently from a podcast that Jeff Passan was on, and very similar to what Heyman had to say, and equally, I guess, in my opinion, is damning.
How is Tom Ricketts approaching this season? On one hand, the Cubs payroll, I think right now is around $170 million. So they've clearly got room to spend. But I haven't gotten a sense from people in the industry that they have any inclination to go and give big dollars out this winter. But what the Cubs are lacking at this point is star level players. They have a bunch of good baseball players. Do they have any great ones though? And when you don't have great baseball players, can you win championships that way? And you mix that all in with the fact that Jed Hoyer is in the final year of his contract right now, and Craig Counsell is coming off of his first season when the team that he left absolutely stomped him to win the division. Jordan, I see the...
I mean, that is, he's calling it out there, right?
Oh, yeah. And again, this is something that we've talked about, right? The Cubs have a bunch of really good, above average baseball players, but where's the star? And that's probably part of the reason why they want to trade Cody Bellinger, because he's paid like a star, but he's not a star.
And then finally, and we brought Bob Nightengale on to talk about this. This was in his most recent USA Today article. The Cubs, whose 2016 era championship window closed abruptly, are a cash cow with one of the largest markets in baseball. Yet instead of negotiating with any of the marquee free agents, they're instead focusing on the mid-market players. They're probably out on Soto, Burns, Fried, and obviously Snell is gone. I mean, okay, no doubt Soto is on a league of their own. $700 million is what we're talking, right? Okay. But what, seriously, Corbin Burns and Max Fried, we can't be in on any of those?
Well, I don't have the answer, but here's the problem. So last night Snell goes, right? So now the other teams that were in on Blake Snell are now in on all these other guys, right? Same thing with Juan Soto. When Juan Soto goes, he only can go to one team. And so if the Cubs don't get ahead of a teams that are willing to spend or planning to spend are going to jump ahead of them, if I'm reading the tea leaves correctly.
Absolutely. And the Cubs are going to kind of I feel like they're going to sit back. I know Jed talked about that earlier. And, my question, Dustin, is would Jed Hoyer, he's a punching bag for a lot of the fans, but would he be making the same moves if his owner was Steve Cohen or Hal Steinbrenner or John Middleton of the Phillies, right? Is he not inclined to give out big contracts? Is it something that, he doesn't stomach very well? Because I will tell you, remember when Theo was here, it didn't feel to me like there was that fear of a big contract. I mean, is this, I guess, if let's say Jed Hoyer was hired by Steve Cohen of the Mets, right? Would he be afraid to sign Pete Alonso to a big deal extension?
I think that's an unanswerable question, right? I mean, if money were no object, I guess why wouldn't you? Now you could say, well, that's not what I believe in fundamentally, but your owner, when your owner is Steve Cohen, Jed, spend my money. It's okay. I want to win now. I don't want to wait.
Well, here's the thing though.
Oh, now you have different marching orders. You have different marching orders. And where's Jed Hoyer's resume? Okay. His resume, it's good, but it's attached to Theo, right? His resume is attached to Theo. So it's not like he's done something so special with his brand of doing things that he can say, just tap the brakes, Mr. Owner. I got this.
Well, when we talk about Theo, the Cubs were most aggressive. Obviously, they went through that rebuild 2011 to 2014, right? And then 2015 and 16, they signed John Lester, Jason Hayward, Ben Zobrist, Joe Madden. In 2017-18 offseason, they signed Yu Darvish, right? And the Cubs were even the only non-West Coast team that Shohei Ohtani agreed to meet with. So I just felt like in that time period, let's say 2015 to 2018, they were willing to go ahead and talk with every free agent, and every rumor seemed that they were in on it, right? Some of them panned out, some of them didn't, but they were in on it. They were brought up in all of these things. Who do you hear them being brought up with for this offseason?
Well, one name, and that's the Japanese pitcher. That's what I've heard, right? That's what I've heard. But I've heard the Dodgers are still in on him. I don't know how in the world that happens, but they're supposedly still in on him.
And the Padres, and the Red Sox, and Toronto, and the Giants. You keep hearing the same 4 or 5 teams, but the Cubs really aren't in any of those conversations.
Right. And that's the only one I've heard. That's the only one I've heard that they're interested in.
Right. And so I just remember, for me, my first offseason of concern was 2018-19, right? Cubs lost the division in game 163 versus the Brewers 3-1. They only scored 1 run. Then they lost the wild card to the Rockies 2-1 in 13 innings. And that's when Theo makes his famous quote. He said, I think part of the way, here's where I am about the offense. And I mean this with no disrespect to any of our players. I respect them all greatly in every way, but I think part of getting better is facing the problem. And our offense broke somewhere along the lines. And so, of course, there's going to be a thorough examination. Of course, we're going to spend our energy trying to fix it and fixing it. So that's what he had to say at that point in time. Theo, offense is broken. Very famous quote. But then we got to the 18-19 offseason, right? Right after losing that wild card game. You still have all these great players, but it was clear that Jason Hayward wasn't the player they thought they would sign, right? And they stuck with it. They stuck with him the entire time, no matter how bad he was, pretty much through his entirety of his contract. But I looked at all the top free agents, right? The top 10 free agents. This was MLB trade rumors. In 2018-19, there was Michael Brantley, J.A. Happ, A.J. Pollock, Nate Eovaldi, who's on the market again, Yasmani Grandal, Craig Kimbrell, Dallas Keuchel, Patrick Corbin. But the two big ones were Manny Machado and Bryce Harper. So you could have gotten Bryce Harper to play right field instead of Jason Hayward and make Jason Hayward the most expensive backup outfielder, right? Or you could have had him play center field at that point in time. You had Manny Machado. Maybe you could have moved Chris Bryant to right field and played Manny Machado at third. You had all of that, right? The only move the Cubs made after declaring that the offense was broken was signing Daniel Descalso and Brad Brock. The team finished 84-78 that season, finished in third place in Joe Maddon's fire, right? Then in 2019-2020 in the offseason, they let Nick Castellanos, who the Cubs acquired at the trade deadline, they let him leave for free agency, right? In 51 games in 2019, Castellanos hit .321, 16 home runs, 36 RBIs. And they just let him walk away again.
Yep.
And so there was a lot of great free agents in that class. Zach Wheeler, Steven Strasburg, Anthony Rondon, Garrett Cole, and Castellanos himself, Madison Bumgarner. But you never heard the Cubs in on any of those guys. None of them.
Nope.
And so the big offseason signing of the 2019-2020 season was Steven Souza. Remember that one? And so 2020 was the COVID years, goofy, weird playoff structure. They went 34-26. They won the division by 3 games, but I mean, like, that's not real baseball. You know what I mean? So they were number 3 seed in the new expanded postseason for that year, and they were swept by the Marlins in the first round of the playoffs. I was on a rooftop for that. That was the last time the Cubs have been in the postseason. Now, Dustin, 2020-21 offseason, Theo resigns, and on November 17th, they non-tendered Kyle Schwarber, probably the biggest mistake that they make. But
big time mistake.
They passed on another weak free agent class, nothing I was really upset about. Ha-Sung Kim, DJ LeMahieu, Marcelo Zuna, George Springer, JT Realmuto, Trevor Bauer. But they didn't do anything big. They signed Jock Peterson, Matt Duffy, and Austin Romaine. None of these are like earth-shattering moves to make the team better. And that was in 2021 season that the Cubs started ripping it down, right? Trade Yu Darvish before the season starts. Jock Peterson was the first to go, then Chafin, then Rizzo, and then Baez and Bryant. And the window is shut. And now we're in the middle of the second rebuild in a decade. And so the Cubs finished 71-91 to finish in 4th place, 24 games out of 4th place. So, that was just, okay, what is it? Rebuild, retool, don't know. Top 10 free agents in 21-22, Nick Castellanos, Max Scherzer, Trevor Story, Robert Ray, Marcus Semien, Kevin Gausman, Chris Bryant. How about the top 3? Freddie Freeman, Corey Seager, and Carlos Correa. And they get none in the top 10 on that one. But Freddie Freeman is the one. You let Chris Bryant go. I mean, wow, that would have been a nice pickup. The Cubs did come close to signing a top 10 free agent. Marcus Stroman was ranked 11th that season, and the Cubs signed him to a 3-year, $71 million deal with an opt-out after the second year. And that, Dustin, is the kind of deal that Jed's comfortable making. No long-term commitment, doesn't break the bank, and the guy can opt out, right? But you're not going to get the Corbin Burns for that kind of deal. You're not. Now, I said on my wish list I wanted Walker Buehler. He's a guy that you could get for that type of deal this year, and I think he's most likely to come to the Cubs. But again, what else did they do? They also, that offseason, got Yan Gomes, David Robertson, and Clint Frazier. You remember that one?
Yep.
They finished 74-88. That was our first season broadcasting. They're 3rd place in the Central. Now, in 2022-23, they finally signed a top 10 free agent. That was this class of Wilson Contreras, Brandon Nimmo, Justin Verlander, Jacob deGrom, Carlos Rodon, Dansby Swanson at number 5, Xander Bogaerts, Trey Turner, Carlos Correa, and Aaron Judge. So the Cubs got the 5th best free agent, but he was the fourth best shortstop, right? He was all glove, not a big offensive guy. The guy I wanted was Trey Turner. That was number one on my list. But again, they went cheap there, Dustin. They went the cheapest they could as far as shortstops are concerned. And so, like, when the Cubs offense isn't clicking, you can't look at Dansby Swanson and be like, this is the guy that's going to carry us.
Right. No, you're right. Listen, you are correct. You and I there's not going to be any arguing between you and I on this one.
Right. They also that season signed Jamison Tyone, Eric Hosmer, Trey Mancini, and then took a flyer on Cody Bellinger, who was one of the worst players since 2020. He was just injured all the time, no good. That worked out. Bellinger had a resurgent season, won comeback player of the year. Cubs finished with a record of 83-79, second in the NL Central, one game out of the postseason. So there you are in 20, close to the playoffs in 23. 24 was supposed to be playoffs or bust this last season. They signed 2 top 10 free agents. Jody Imanaga was number 10, and that was a steal, Dustin. 5 years, $85 million contract. But look what you have there again. You have a deal that's not a huge, big risk, right? 5 years, $85 million. Did you expect to have a Cy Young type season from Jody Imanaga? No. I don't think anyone expected that. So that you lucked out, but you're not always going to luck out on that. See Tyler Chatwood, right? But he was, they also signed Cody Bellinger, who was ranked number 2, 3 years, $80 million, 2 opt-outs. It is a lot of money, but it's not a long-term deal. It's a 3-year deal. And then, of course, Shohei got that monster contract. But despite that monster year from Shota, the Cubs from Shota, the Cubs finished with an identical 83-79 record. They finished 6 games out of the final wild card spot. So, Dustin, here we are. Top 10 offseason free agents right now are Sean Manaea, Anthony Santander, Jack Flaherty, Pete Alonso, Max Fried, Willie Adames, Blake Snell, Alex Bregman, Corbin Burns, and Juan Soto being the top. But according to John Heyman, 7 teams called to inquire about Soto. The Yankees, Mets, Dodgers, Blue Jays, Red Sox, Giants, even the Rays. The Cubs didn't pick up the phone. I get you want to spread it around. I know you've said that, right? Like you'd rather spread it around than put it.
Well, I want to spread around. I want to spread around 500 million, 600 million. That's what I want to spread around.
Right. And so, Blake Snell is out right there, but I'm trying to figure out, right now it feels to me like the Cubs are operating on the Ricketts as far as a cap. We don't want to go much above the tier 1 level. So that's roughly about 215 million. And so I like roughly 230 million, I would say. But, when you're in a sport where there's no cap, football, basketball, hockey, you have a cap. You cannot spend what you want. And so I don't think the Ricketts are very comfortable going above $230 million. And so for me, I just feel like they are going to try to be under the cap for this season. I don't think they're going to go over 234. So, are they going to try to defer something? Are they going to kind of just go with the smaller mid-tier guys like Walker Buehler, like Jack Flaherty? And again, offensively, where are the Cubs going to go? Now, that to me is the question. I just wonder.
I think that's part of why Cody Bellinger's in the mix, because they need a bopper, and Cody's not a bopper. He's okay, but he's not a bopper, right? They need a bopper. And I think the money that they're giving him could be spent on that bopper potentially.
And so then the question is, but that's the other issue as far as what Bob Nightengale brought up is the issue right now. It says the worst kept secret at the GM meetings was the Cubs offering Bellinger to anyone and everyone. No team has expressed strong interest. Come on, one GM said, who's going to touch that contract? The risk is too great for the production. So again, if the Cubs are going to get rid of Bellinger, they're going to have to eat half that contract.
Well, or they're going to, or they're going to have to probably overpay in prospect capital, right?
Does any of that make you comfortable?
Well, here's one of the trades I heard. Okay. And I don't have the second player from the Blue Jays, but it was Shaw, Bellinger, and Bush for Vlad and a pitcher from the.
It was Kevin Gossman.
Okay. What do you think of that?
So again, there's a couple of things that have me a little bit concerned, and that is the question of whether you're willing to sign him because you only have 1 year. You only have 1 year of
Vlad's got only left is 2025.
Right. And so you're telling me you're going to give all of that for 1 year, 1 year on that. I'm not really comfortable. I get it. We're all going to throw around trades, but that one.
Well, I'm just saying, like, there is no flexibility. And Nico, when the season ended, Nico was looked at as a flexibility piece. There's no flexibility there. Why you can't get rid of Nico right now? You'd be giving him away. He's at his lowest trade value ever because of the injury. So I'm saying I just don't think that's a real. I don't think it's a real option.
Yeah, and again, that's And the actual trade was Guerrero and Gaussman for Bush, Bellinger, and Cade Horton, which is way worse.
That's worse. I thought it was for Shaw.
No, but again, either one, even if you tell me Shaw, it's a struggle. Horton, no.
Horton, it's a hard no. No.
Bush,
you could talk me into, because you give yourself. Listen, what's Vlad Guerrero making this year?
I don't know off the top of my head, but he's going to make probably about, let's say, 7 to 8. I'll take a look really quick, but
I'm looking it up right now. 7 or 8 million?
I don't, because he's tier 3 free agent or
I'm looking
arbitration.
It up right now.
But
that would be shocking to me. I mean, that seems like
maybe more like 13, 14, I would say. But either way, I mean, again, for 1 year, that to me just doesn't seem like worth it. I would be more concerned about that.
All right.
That would be my concern. So 2025.
Well, I'm saying, I mean, do you have
28 million is what they're thinking. 28 million.
Thinking in the future.
That's the estimate. He's got to be
right.
arbitration.
And Bellinger, you owe him 60 million.
No, right. Next year, Vlad Guerrero is going to make 28 million, and so it's almost going to be even money.
Okay, it's a push, right?
Right. So it's even money, but losing either Cade Horton or Matt Shaw to me would be almost like a deal breaker. I just either of those guys are really, really.
Well,
tough.
I guess the question is, okay, so Soto and Snell are not options, and I never thought either one was. How is the Fly the W podcast helping to fix the Cubs' problems? What are you doing?
We had our wish list, and my wish list is still pretty stuck on.
Those guys are still out there, right? A lot of those guys are still out there.
A lot of those guys. The one move that
the two big names that are gone, were never a possibility anyway.
Well, I didn't want Blake Snell because I wasn't into, again, a lefty. That was my thing, and so that was my thinking on Blake Snell, lefty and older. I wanted a righty, and I wanted someone below 33, right? But I would say that for me, if you could get Willy Adames and put him at third base, or and then move Paredes, or I'm not somebody that's all that. Like if Paredes was on the bench, I know it'd be expensive, but I would deal with that. I would deal with the Paredes being on a bench if you're telling me I could have Willy Adames, who played for Council in Milwaukee, and get some power numbers that way. That would be my ideal move right now. Yeah. And then obviously getting a number one pitcher. I still like Walker Buehler. That to me,
Max Fried. I like Max Fried, right?
I get a little nervous with his injury history and stuff like that. I would. Here's the thing: Paredes is going to make $6.5 million. I can live with that on the bench. If you're telling me I can get Willy Adames, I could live with that. So that to me is a move that you can make. There's other moves you can make.
So he's your utility. He becomes your utility infielder.
Right. And again, then taking a look at bullpen and starters. But when you talk about position players, if you can tell me we can get Adames and a top tier pitcher, I think that would be a very successful, doable offseason plan.
This is the Fly the W670 podcast. Believe it or not, it's season 3, episode 95. What's going on with this Cubs organization? Don't forget to listen, download, review, and please drop us a 5-star review. In this segment, Crawly talks to USA Today columnist Bob Nightengale to try to figure out and get to the bottom of all the chaos in the front offices at 1060 West Addison.
Joining me now on the Fly of the W podcast, we are happy to have back our old friend. You know his work from all the social medias and on USA Today, Bob Nightengale. Bob, how you doing, buddy?
Yeah, doing great, Crawly. Happy holidays and Thanksgiving.
Yeah, right now it doesn't feel like Cub fans have a lot to be thankful for. It just seems like, when the Cubs did this kind of second rebuild or retool, when they got rid of all the guys from the championship roster, for me, it felt like, okay, 2023 was going to be the start of, okay, now we got some younger guys coming up. Let's start spending money. But, in all of this winter meeting talk, you just haven't heard the Cubs name mentioned a lot. And you wrote this, I believe, on Monday. It was in the USA Today. You said the Cubs, whose 2016 era championship window closed abruptly, are a cash cow with one of the largest markets in baseball. Yet instead of negotiating with any of the marquee free agents, they're focusing on mid-market players. They're probably out on Soto, Burns, Fried, and Snell. We saw Snell sign with the Dodgers that morning, or this morning. I mean, that is not music to Cub fans' ears there.
No, I mean, the one thing is, with the Cubs is that they're in the National League Central. You really have to spend big. They have the biggest payroll in the division, and they'll argue that. It's almost like, with the Hal Steinbrenner, the Yankees, he kept telling Brian Cashman, why is the Tampa Bay Rays always winning our division? Their payroll is like, $200 million less than ours. And I'm sure the same thing there with the Cubs is like Tom Ricketts is saying, wait a minute now, we already have the biggest payroll. Shouldn't we be, winning this division and dominating it? And you look back, with that window closing early, but, even though Cubs fans are disappointed and keep those players, they made the right move on everybody except for Kyle Schwarber. I mean, all the offers they made, were big time offers. They were turned down, and guys went elsewhere and took lesser contracts and haven't been the same. So they did make the right moves during that time.
Yeah, and with Blake Snell, I mean, the rich just keep getting richer, right? The Dodgers signed him to a 5-year, $182 million deal, but a lot of that money is deferred. So I guess I don't understand if they did it with Ohtani and now they're doing it with Snell. Why aren't other teams jumping on this idea of deferring certain portions of these deals till later? At least it seems to me the amount that the Dodgers are deferring to later.
Well, I think every team would do that, but how many players want to do that? Because you weigh less than the contract value. Like a Ohtani, that's a $700 million contract, but it's either worth $430 or worth $460. That's a big haircut by deferring that much money. Snell's is about the same, but because he got a $52 million signing bonus, and he did his that way because he lives in the state of Washington, no state taxes. That way he can't be taxing that in California. So no, every club would love to have a lot of deferrals. Washington National did that for years with Strasburg and all the big guys. Scherzer, they're still paying Scherzer money. So everybody's open to it, but just how many players really want to do it?
All right. So when you take a look at some of the big top tier free agents, Juan Soto, Bob, the thing that bothers me about Soto is like, I heard even the Rays made a call, right? Like at least they made a call. I have heard zero on the Cubs. Nothing about Juan Soto.
Yeah, but why make a call if you're really not interested? I mean, you can make a call on a $50 million mansion on lakefront, and you're not interested, but you make a call. I mean, Kansas City Royals say, "Oh, we had some interest too." Yeah, everybody does. Oakland A's can say that, but just a game. I mean, there's only 3 or 4 teams in this thing, and and they're not gonna spend that kind of money on Ohtani, and Ohtani is a huge moneymaker. Why in the world would you spend that kind of money on Soto, who doesn't sell tickets like Ohtani or corporate sponsorships, nothing like that?
No, but at the same time, when you're talking, like you said in your article about being a major market and a cash cow, why wouldn't you be in a guy that by all accounts looks to be a surefire Hall of Famer?
We'll see. Hey, when you're the Dodgers, people talk about, oh, Soto there, he's not going to the Dodgers. All you have to ask yourself is why were the San Diego Padres so much better last year without Soto than they were with him? If he's a Hall of Famer, if he brings up, all this stuff, why were they a much better team? And, it didn't work out in San Diego. Who knows if it's going to work out somewhere else? So I just don't think it makes sense. I mean, the Cubs could do it PR-wise, making a call to Soto. but they don't want it. If you want to spend that kind of money, you might as well spread it out to a bunch of different areas.
All right, let's spread it out a bunch of different areas. Corbin Burns is a guy that has played for Craig Counsell, obviously, when Craig was managing in Milwaukee. Max Fried is a guy that was mentioned, it would be a good fit for the Cubs, but it again, doesn't sound like they're interested in either spending what it would take to get those guys.
No, I mean, that's why they're trying to move guys. That's why they're trying to move. If they move Cody Bellinger and get that, $32.5 million off the books, then I think they would be in on Burns. If they Nico Hoerner, they trade him, maybe they're on some other, bigger free agents. Right now, talking to agents, they're more just on the second tier guys.
And I guess that's the disconnect that Cubs fans are having, Bob, because I'm paying for $14 Bud Lights, ticket prices, parking prices, all this stuff. It almost seems like, like the old Moneyball, like, hey, we're going to find a bunch of guys that we can get that are maybe not be the biggest names. And it doesn't make sense considering the amount of revenue that's coming in, as opposed to saying, oh, well, maybe we'll find a bargain this, maybe this guy will have a bounce back year. I guess when Theo was here, and when you're talking about 2015, 16, 17, 18, Ohtani, one of the only teams on the non-West Coast that he met with were the Cubs. So it felt like the Cubs were always in on it and a destination to go. And now it's going from, the Cubs are meeting with everybody and talking with everybody to, the Cubs are going mid-tier. And that's what I don't get. They don't have stars. And I think you mentioned that in your article. Here, it's right now that they have to eat money, and nobody wants to, really kind of take on that Cody Bellinger contract. I mean, we'll see what happens once the dominoes start falling. If those who strike out with Juan Soto, would they want to go, Cody Bellinger? I don't know, but it just seems like for a team that's in one of the biggest markets that charges one of the highest ticket game day experiences, it shouldn't have to be that way.
I think what hurts the Cubs is the Milwaukee Brewers' success. Why are the Brewers doing this year after year after year with a payroll much less than the Cubs? So I'm sure, the Ricketts, the ownership group, are saying, hey, why can't we do that? Why can't we do what the Brewers are doing? The Brewers aren't relying on money. They traded Corbin Burns to save money. They'll probably trade Devin Williams at trade deadline to save money. So, it's not like money is the answer to everything. So I think the fact, just being in that division, is like, hey, your payroll is already $100 million, you're at least $75 million greater than everybody else. You shouldn't have to spend. And I think the Brewers are like with the Tampa Bay Rays were in the AL East. It's like, why are they doing this thing? They're not spending big money. Why can't the Cubs do what the Brewers are doing?
Yeah, and those are small market teams they're kind of forced to do that. They don't have the option where they don't generate the revenue that the Cubs do. But you also had an article on September 8th that talked about internal friction in the Cubs front office. High-ranking officials say, but despite the disappointing season, Jed Hoyer, president of baseball operations, will return in 2025. So when I look at that, and I think about what you were saying about how, it's not like the Cubs are not spending at all. Like they're not the A's or the White Sox or something. But I mean, is there a feeling when you talk about friction, or I guess when you're hearing about friction, are we, is it ownership to front office, Craig Counsell? I know that, for me, I think Craig Counsell came to Chicago because it's closer to home to Milwaukee than New York, but also not having to get rid of guys like they did with Hader years ago when they're in the middle of a playoff run, being able to get bigger guys so you don't have to do that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and I think with the the ownership, the top levels of front office are saying, wait a minute now, how come we're not in the playoffs? Hey, we got Craig Counsell, we spent a record amount for him. It didn't change a thing. Same, pretty much the same record as under David Ross. So I think they're looking at everything like, when are you going to start producing? Where's where's those draft picks? Where's the player development guys? And I think they need those guys to step up for ownership to say, okay, it's working. You look at the Dodgers, for instance. Yeah, they have the big payroll, but why are the Dodgers picking last or next to last every single year and still drafting and developing better than any team in baseball?
Yeah, and hopefully, like the Cubs have a really good farm system, and hopefully they can continue in the majors. When you look at the free agents still left on the board, obviously the Cody Bellinger thing is going to be hanging over there. What kind of market do you see out there for Nico Hoerner? He obviously has the injury that he's dealing with. Do you see a big market for Nico Hoerner?
No, you try to think of teams that really need a second baseman. There's not a lot of them. So I think there'll be a market for him, though. Hard-nosed player, productive player. So yeah, there'll be a bigger market for him than Bellinger, with that contract. So then, they look at the free agent market and stuff like that. Why not go get a Walker Buehler on a 1-year contract or a Jack Flaherty? Flaherty did very well. I don't think the Dodgers have interest in bringing either guy back now. Not to get Snell. So nobody was jumping up and down when they signed Soto last year, thinking, "Oh, what a great sign." I mean, everybody kind of thought this guy was a 4th or 5th starter, and they got a steal on the guy, absolute steal. They got Bellinger in a short-term contract instead of having to do the 6 or 7 years. So they made some, shrewd investments, but they have to make, more of them if they're not going to, spend big money.
Right. And again, when you talk about Roki Sasaki, everybody's kind of in on him. With the Dodgers and now getting Snell in there, I mean, I guess I'd never want to count the Dodgers out. The Padres, we know he has that relationship with Yu Darvish, but from all purposes, he wants to play in a major market team. How attractive do you think the Cubs are to Sasaki, especially having two high-profile Japanese players on the team?
Yeah, he's actually a country kid, so he doesn't really, crazy about a big market. So, but, having the 2 Japanese players, the 2 stars on the Dodgers, does he want to play with his friends? They're all together in the WBC. Or does he want to go to San Diego, a much smaller market? They've been very successful in the Japanese market. I think if he doesn't go to the Dodgers, it's the Padres. I don't see any other team being involved. I really don't. It's not a matter of money. People talk about international money. This kid's forfeiting over $250 million by coming out at the age of 23 instead of waiting a couple of years like Yamamoto. When everybody bid for Yamamoto, who got $325, remember Ohtani signed for $2 million with the Angels.
Right. And then, there was I think it was on MLB Network the other day, a question about would the Cubs be kicking the tires on Alex Bregman? I don't see that being a Jed Hoyer kind of move, especially just when you think about age 31, Matt Shaw really playing out of his mind, in the Premier 12, all of that stuff. I mean, is that just kind of talk to talk? Because I don't see how the Alex Bregman would really fit on the Cubs.
I don't see he's paying that kind of money. I think a Willie Adames would make more sense. If you want to shift him over to third base, which he's doing, he's going to be a cheaper contract, probably around the 150, 160 range, instead of well over 200. Great personality, everything else. But yeah, I'm with you. I don't see Bregman going there. I could see him going to Detroit or one of the New York clubs or Toronto or back to Houston.
Now, you mentioned the Cubs and you could always put maybe Matt Shaw at second, et cetera. Let Nico start out the season, trade him midway, move Shaw up there. And then you got Adames at third. I'm sure he has a great relationship with Craig Counsell and he has some of the pop that the Cubs are definitely looking for.
Yeah. And it's got that engaging personality too. Almost like a Javi Baez back in the day and those type of things. But yeah, he's a kind of a crowd favorite. He brings a lot of energy to that clubhouse, a real energetic guy. So we'll see about the Dodgers. I know the Dodgers have interest in him, but I'm not sure. They're usually the Dodgers set their price and don't go over it. So I think he's going to make out well in the free agent market, but I would think he'd make more sense than Bregman.
Now, when you take a look at Craig Counsell, like you said, the Cubs finished with the exact same record that David Ross and the Cubs did in 2023. But this year, he's kind of already added a couple more coaches. He's got the lay of the land. What do you expect from Craig Counsell this year and his impact on the organization?
Well, I think much more comfort level. Now he's bringing his own coaches. He doesn't have David Ross's staff and he can do kind of things his own way. Now he knows the lay of the land, a better relationship with Jed Hoyer in the front office, Carter Hawkins, just because he knows those guys better. So I would think a lot more, a comfort level. And, hey, he's been very honest. Remember at the end of the season, he goes, hey, we're light years away from the Brewers. So like we're knocking on the door right there. So, but he's he's a very sharp guy, a good front office mind. I mean, he could easily be a GM one day rather than being a manager. He could, go either way in that thing. So I think he might be, stepping more into the player development and having more input throughout the whole organization, rather than just the 26 guys of the major league team.
Now, this is Jed Hoyer's final year of his contract. He's been with the Cubs for a long, long time now. It's 2011, I want to say. But if, the Cubs decide to go in a different direction than Jed Hoyer, how much input do you think Craig Counsell would have as far as the next, whether it's president baseball operations or whatever he would call you, or do you think it'd be more likely that Carter Hawkins, who is technically the Cubs GM, would then go up and go from there?
I would think you'd probably go outside the organization just because, they're kind of together. I mean, Carter Hawkins is with the Hoyer. So I would think go outside. But I would think they'd certainly bring Counsell in and ask his recommendations. He knows a lot of people in the game. He's got an opinion. Not that they're going to, do what he says, but they'll certainly, got to bring him in and listen to his suggestions if they decide to go a different direction after this year. I mean, they probably have to make the playoffs, for everybody to be safe.
All right. Do you have any good nuggets as far as for Cubs fans for Thanksgiving? Something to say, hey, maybe this, I hear this. Is there anything that you think might be happening or targets that the Cubs might have?
I think just to be patient. I mean, the patience worked a year ago. I'm not saying the Cubs made the playoffs last year, but they got some good deals. And I think they may sit back and say, you know what, patience worked. Let's do it again. But, guys like, what happened with Blake Snell, if they like Jack Flaherty pitched very well for Detroit last year. If they hung on to Flaherty, they might have made the World Series. So I think a Flaherty, a Walker Buehler, now they can fall in the Cubs' laps if they want them. I think Buehler's a great fiery guy. I think people will love him. He's got that Jake Arrieta temperament. So in that part, if they weren't going to sign Blake Snell, and they weren't, it's good that two other guys now, could drop into their laps as far as, okay, let's grab these guys.
Well, Bob, I appreciate you jumping on here. Our listeners, where can they find your work, both in print and in social media?
Yeah, just send, if you go online, you can just go usatoday.com if you don't want to buy the paper. And otherwise, social media on X is just Beat Nightengale. So I'll tweet all my stories on that too.
It's always great stuff, Bob. I appreciate you jumping on here. And for you and your family, I hope you have a very happy Thanksgiving.
You too, Crawly. My best to you and yours.
This is season 3, episode 95 of the Fly the W podcast. Don't forget to leave us a 5-star review. We're trying to figure out in this one what is going on with our favorite Cubs team, our favorite organization in all of baseball. Don't forget you can email Crawly and I, flythew670@gmail.com. All right, Crawly, let's go around the league, but let's start out with Nico Hoerner, who was on with Bruce Levine over the weekend.
Yep, inside the clubhouse every Saturday at 9 a.m., 670 The Score gives me my baseball fix in the offseason. And, Nico is a great guy, great contributor to The Score, and he's always pretty honest with a lot of what he says. And so, they asked him about the 2024 season and the disappointment. This is what he had to say.
Breaking it down on an individual level and then team level, it was almost, I think it stung more to come out short again, because I think there were such strong stretches, like you mentioned, that really showed what the group is capable, similar to the year before, I guess. And it's part of what makes it encouraging, but also frustrating, in that the group is definitely capable of a whole lot more than 83 wins. And there's just a lot more there. And, I feel that on an individual level too. There's a million things I could have done better. I could have had a better year as a whole statistically, but I think more so for me, when I think back to my own season, there's just a lot of moments I could have really turned games and had a similar year, with an overall stat line and such, but just impacted some moments at a higher level in ways that I've done a lot in my career, I think. But that was kind of probably what stung the most individually from this past year.
Dustin, I mean, for me, I don't blame Nico at all for 2024. I mean, he had some injuries early in the year, and obviously on his throwing shoulder, and his flexing tender. But I don't blame Nico. I thought he was fine. He, to me, was not the problem. But this is the second year in a row where we're hearing that we know we're better than this, but I don't understand why they can't fulfill their potential.
Well, there's a lot of that going around in Chicago sports right now, Crawly. A lot of teams that cannot fulfill their potential. So maybe it's a Chicago thing. But again, this is not the time to trade Nico Hoerner. And like you, I appreciate his candor and his honesty.
Yeah, he was asked about first-year manager Craig Counsell and what it was like playing for him.
There's nothing that he does that's just kind of throwing stuff together and seeing what happens. Like he's always paying incredible attention. His attention to detail is pretty unmatched, I think. And everything he does comes from a lot of thought and preparation, and also communication. And as a player, that's all you can ask for. And he does it in a way that holds you to a high standard, but also instills confidence in you. And I think that's a really great quality, because players are smart sometimes, and in that they can tell if a manager or anyone is just complimenting him just to fluff him up. But he's so well read and observant that he knows exactly why a player is valuable, and he'll remind you of that, but also holds you to a high standard to improve in other ways. And then also just be honest when there's a gap between what you're doing and what he thinks the best version of you can be. And I really appreciate that. In my case, he's he holds me to a high standard and wants me to continue to develop and pursue the best version of how I can impact winning for us.
I am still on the Craig Counsell bus. I still think that he is going to be a manager that's going to make changes. I am very curious to see how 2025 plays out, most specifically for Jed Hoyer. And if Jed Hoyer is not retained, and I think it's playoffs or he's out the door, I am very curious to see how much of a role Craig Counsell would have in whoever his Jed Hoyer's replacement would be.
Boy, that's really that's a whole nother that's a whole podcast right there, probably. That's a whole. I mean, let's see Craig Tober. Okay, I know there's Craig Tember up in Milwaukee. At least it was Craig Tember. Let's get some Craig Tober going on at Wrigley, and then we can talk about what's his stay going to be in the future. I mean, give me a break. I mean, really, he's gonna have thoughts on his next boss. Who's going to come here? Who's going to come here when he's the guy telling you what to do? That's going to make it.
You want to work. You want a
shorter list.
You're going to want someone that can work well with your manager, right? Your highest paid manager. And again, a lot of this is going to come down to organizational stuff. But you saw when he was in the organization, he did he did a very good job.
He has a big year coming up. Okay. He's got a big year coming up.
Speaking of a big year coming up, Nico was asked if, he's paying attention to any of the little rumors that, have been going on podcasts like this.
Yeah, I pay attention here and there. I think, obviously from a personal level, like guys getting non-tendered or traded or whatever it is, there's a lot of people that, you just care a lot about and have spent a lot of time with, and families and all of that. And so just, wanting the best for teammates that stay and move on, all the above, and staff as well. There's so much turnover every year in the sport. And then, as far as the direction of the team, there's ways we can improve by adding guys or calling guys up, but there's also, I think, a lot of improvement within the roster itself. And I know I said that last offseason as well, but I really do believe that. And there's definitely even for guys that had solid years, I think almost everyone feels there's a lot that we left on the table for guys that will be returning. So, when you combine that with the opportunity to have money spent and production from the minor leagues that we showed last year, I think that's a really great combo and a great recipe for success.
I guess for me, I know that there can be improvement on the roster. Paredes did not have was not very good, especially at home after the trade. But Dustin, the problem isn't the numbers to me as much as, and this is where we talk about a superstar. Who, if the team is struggling, who's going to pull you out of it? Who's going to prevent those months-long slumps? Like you can't have a slump for a month, a week, yes, 2 weeks, a month. You can't. They've done it 2 years in a row where they basically stunk the month of May and then saw themselves having to climb out of a giant hole. Who's the guy that's going to do that? And I don't think that guy's on this roster, Dustin, right now.
No, I agree with him.
I mean, you could argue Cody Bellinger was in 2023 when he came back and he was healthy, but we've only seen flashes of it. And so I don't know who that is. Now, obviously, the big question that we have is about Nico's health. And so he was asked about it.
Yeah, it's going well. It's the first surgery I've ever had, which is kind of fortunate, I guess, in some ways to have lasted this long. Yesterday was a 6-week mark from the surgery. So definitely hitting all the boxes we want to by this point. And, as far as I'm feeling very confident in the process, and nice to know that, my body's healing well up to this point. It's mainly focusing on range of motion at this point, but in a good spot.
In a good spot, Dustin. So, I mean, we'll see what happens.
Well, I'm just, as long as he's ready for opening day, I'm fine with it, but I still wouldn't trade him before that. He's got to go out and show teams what he can do again.
So let me ask you a question. If the Cubs did get Willy Adames, would you prefer Nico or Isaac Paredes at second?
Nico.
Okay. Yeah.
I was really disappointed with Paredes. Now, again, I think they were banking on like a change of scenery for both guys, right? And I don't think either guy did much for their new team. Not that they were really doing anything for their old team.
Right. Other news going on right now. Ben Brown cleared. He has been cleared for a normal offseason throwing program, according to Sahadev Sharma and Patrick Mooney in The Athletic. Ben is a friend of the podcast. He's been on before. Great kid, electric stuff. But a weird neck injury had him out for more than half of his rookie year. So he didn't pitch after June 8th. And so
I think talk about that. What do you think? What do you think his role is? Assuming he's healthy, is he part of the rotation? Is he going to the back end of the bullpen? I mean, I'm just saying right now, assuming healthy, what do you do with the guy? Because there was a rumor back end of the bullpen. Well, I want to bring this up because it's timely. There's a rumor going around. We talked about it on the Mully and Haw show today. I don't know if you got to catch much of the show, but on a Bears Friday on a Wednesday, because the Bears play tomorrow, we actually took 20 minutes to talk about the Cubs and the idea of Justin Verlander coming to the North Side finally. I mean, that makes absolutely zero sense to me. Zero. No. Okay, Crawly, I have a list. I have a prepared list.
All right, you got a prepared list. I'm ready for this.
I want to see all these guys pitch at Wrigley Field before I want to see Justin Verlander pitching as a Cub. Cade Horton, Ben Brown, Wicks, Assad, Killian, Thompson, Wisniewski. Okay, I want to see all those guys pitch before I want to see Justin Verlander. Because how much are you going to have to pay Justin Verlander? 15? 16? 12?
Right,
too much. If you're looking for a veteran to be around this staff, then you may as well have kept Kyle Hendricks around. Okay, yeah. And I didn't want that either because I want Cade Horton, Ben Brown, Wicks, Assad, Killian Thompson, and Wisniewski throwing for my baseball team next year. Not Justin Verlander. Another one I heard. Somebody you talked about in the first segment of this podcast. Okay, Mr. Two Eyes that don't see straight, the pitch for the Nationals, it's getting like $50 million from 5 different teams at once, like that he could end up with the Cubs. Keep him. No, for me.
That's why when I made my wish list, I was looking for guys around in the 30 or early 30s. I don't want guys in their 40s.
Your list is fine. I don't want Verlander.
Right.
No.
I 100% get that. And I think that you're taking a look. You got pitchers in Justin Steele, Shota, you got Tyone, and then, you want to add one more stud. Like I said, that's ideal. That would be 4. And then
get Cade Horton up here. Okay. Give me Cade Horton at the major league level every 5th day. Let's see what happens. Okay?
But I think with a lot of the young guys,
go buy a closer and give me Ben Brown and put Wicks and Assad in the bullpen. Crawly, all of a sudden, I think we got something. Seriously, I think we got something all of a sudden.
I think right now they want to use, as far as Brown, and they're a little worried maybe about his injury history, is giving these guys those swing roles and bullpen roles right now, letting them kind of develop in the major league level, similar to like they did with Justin Steele. I think ideally that's what they do. And so, I have no problem having a competition for the 5th starter spot, whether Wick, or Jordan Wicks or Assad or somebody else. I think Assad is better off as just, again, a nice bridge guy. You know what I mean? A guy that comes in at
Right,
the
but that helps the bullpen, which
helps the
needs help.
bullpen. Right.
And
right.
Wicks could be the same way if that's what they think is best, right? Or, every once in a while you make him the fifth starter, every once in a while you throw him in the bullpen. But that makes all of a sudden you take a couple guys out of the
rotation.
Rotation, and you move them into the bullpen. That strengthens your bullpen.
Yeah, and I think
your best arms, regardless, should be at the major league level next year.
And I think
enough development. Let's go.
I think you're going to see a lot more of that. I think you're going to see a lot of young guys, but again, they're going to be looking for some veterans too to kind of solidify it. But you're going to have a lot of young arms that are going to be coming up there, and you're going to have some flamethrowers. And I think if you're Ben Brown and you're in the bullpen, remember, you don't have to try to pace yourself for 5, 6, 7 innings. You got maybe one inning. You can click up the velocity a couple miles per hour and you look even filthier, right?
Right. All right, let's go. A couple of little hitting coordinator updates, a couple new guys on Mr. Craig Counsell's coaching staff.
Yeah, in the same Athletic article that they talked about Ben Brown, you got some new hitting coordinators right now. So it's not going to be necessarily someone that Craig's going to deal with, but these are guys that are going to be dealing with the minor league hitters, which I feel like right now the pitching is ahead of
minor league hitters. Sorry, minor league hitting.
So Andy Haynes, if that name sounds familiar, he was with Joe Madden as an assistant hitting coach in 2018. He became Counsell's hitting coach with the Brewers, and he's been with the Pirates the last couple seasons, but he is going to be more roaming around, kind of looking at the hitters at the minor league level. They also hired Drew Hedman as the new assistant director of hitting. And so he replaces Will Remrad, who went to go join Terry Francona with the Reds.
Okay.
Finally, Dustin, we do have some congratulations that are in order. We have the 2024 NSMA Awards, the Illinois Sportscaster finalists, and some important people here, people that have been on this podcast, especially that we wanted to shout out. Your partner, David Haw, from the Mully and Haw Show in the morning, WSC.
Well deserving. But here's what's interesting about this list, okay? So Sportscaster of the Year, right? Like, I see Adam Amin, Jeff Joniak, Pat Hughes. I see them as sportscasters, right? I think that there's it's a weird separate category. Taylor McGregor, Dion Miller kind of belong in their own kind of category. And then Layla, Lawrence, and David kind of belong in a category, right? I mean, it's a pretty broad, it's a pretty, each one of these people do a different set of skills. Right. And I think Pat, Jeff, and Adam do a job that like the other people on this list can't do. And that's not a shot. It's just that's just not what they do best. Right.
And vice versa. Right? Some of those guys.
Vice versa. Right. Pat is an example. Pat is fantastic at what he does. I don't think Pat Hughes would be a good talk show host.
Well, you know what, Dustin? It seems, like you said, everyone here seems to have anyone with.
I like all these people. These are all good people and all deserving. And I got to tell you, we are very lucky as Chicago sports fans to have these people covering our teams.
Absolutely. And again, wanted to give a special shout out for everyone in the Score family. And I know Taylor McGregor's been on the podcast, and Pat Hughes, obviously, 670 The Score, and has been on the podcast. So and David's been on the podcast. So, for all these guys, all of them deserving. And like you said, we're very lucky to have as great Chicago sports, whether it's sports radio, whether it's TV, whether it's broadcasters. I think we're really lucky.
And a little tease. We're not going to go into it other than a tease. 9:00 Monday on The Score. Be sure to tune in to the Mully and Haw Show. I will leave it at that. Ooh. I hope everybody out there has a awesome Thanksgiving. We're doing this, Crawly and I, on Blackout Wednesday at 3:00 in the afternoon. So I know I have not had a Mick Ultra yet. I won't speak for Crawly if he's had a cocktail, but I'm ready for a couple. I'm not back at The Score until Monday at least on the air until 5 a.m. So I've got plenty of time. Hopefully everybody listening, everybody who's been with us all year, happy Thanksgiving. We are thankful for you. So Thanks for listening. Thanks for subscribing. Thanks for downloading, all that good stuff.
And go Cubs. Hey guys, it's Crawly. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please don't forget to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel for more content like this. If you want to see more of our videos, be sure to check out our playlist and let us know what you think in the comments below. Also, don't forget to follow us on social media to stay up to date with our latest episodes. Links are in the description. Thanks again for watching, and we'll see you in the next video. Go Cubs!